It being just past 6 p.m., I will go ahead and call the Winnebago County Board of Supervisors to order for August 4th, 2020. The clerk has verified the roll and ensured a quorum. We will clarify a couple of individuals after we do the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation. So next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the invocation by Supervisor Locke. If all could please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now we'll have the invocation by Supervisor Locke. Please go ahead, Supervisor Locke.
Am I on?
Yes, you are.
Okay. Thank you for fresh grace and a week full of promise. Lead us in your ways and fill our hearts with your love and joy. Help us to see others as you see them. We ask that you guide every decision, response, and effort we have. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Supervisor Locke. Moving next, we will go ahead and verify the rest of the roll. We have verified all members are present except for Supervisor Conrad and Supervisor Gordon, who asked to be excused this evening. We just wanted to verify if Supervisor Brunn or Supervisor Finch are on the call. Supervisor Brunn or Supervisor Finch? Supervisor Finch, we have verified is on the call. And now we have also verified Supervisor Brunn. So all members are present except for excused Supervisor Conrad and Supervisor Gordon. So next we will move to a motion to adopt this evening's agenda. And for that, I will call on Supervisor Albrecht.
I move to adopt this evening's agenda.
There's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second to adopt this evening's agenda. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion carries. Moving on down to the next item on the agenda. And that's a time in the agenda when we allow an opportunity for the public to speak on any item on this evening's agenda or any item under county jurisdiction. For those members of the public who wish to speak, if you could go ahead and raise your Zoom hand, that way I will know that you want to speak and we will try to do it in order. So if anyone would wish to speak from the public, please go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. I'll call first on Jordan Hansen.
Am I unmuted?
You are unmuted now, sir. If you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
I'm Jordan Hansen. I live at 14A East Custer Avenue in Oshkosh.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
I'd like to speak in favor on behalf of the Cannabis Advisory Referendum. It's a very salient issue that's been salient for more than 10 years now. And we're surrounded by states that have changed their laws drastically on the matter. And I think that, well, not all issues need a referendum or an advisory referendum. I think that certain issues of certain amount of salience like this ought to be put to a ballot to help guide our leaders who are making the decisions on what we do.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments, sir. Next, I'll call on Tom Hollquist. If you could please go ahead and state your name and address for the record, sir. Please go ahead, sir. You can speak.
Okay. My name is Tom Hollquist, and I reside at 2030 Hazel Street. I'd like to make some comments on the past board meetings. Because I in favor of a strong, strict mask requirement like Taiwan and Korea. Just today only, more Americans have died of COVID-19 than have died since the beginning of the outbreak in Korea, Taiwan, and Vietnam combined. These countries have strict universal mask requirements. These countries have several daily directs directly from Wuhan, so they had a lot of infected people fly in immediately. These countries have totaled less than 400 deaths. I've watched some of the presentations from folks who post on Representative Michael Schraw's Facebook. Representative Schraw has encouraged them to speak at city council and board meetings. Unfortunately, Donnie Herman has also joined the chorus. These presentations are laced with misinformation, disinformation, or false conclusions about mass studies. In normal times, I could just ignore it, but with the pandemic, this information is proving dangerously deadly. Representative Schraw encourages anti-mask posts on his Facebooks, including a fake CDC paper with grammar issues. Posts like that are typical of Russian trolls working for the cyber warfare division of the Russian military. Russian trolls use Facebook to promote dangerous disinformation with the hopes of getting reposted throughout Facebook. When one challenges these Russian-style pros, folks say, oh, it's the mainstream media and they lie. It's okay to use forums like this to run for office, but not in the deadly manner I see it happening here. I've worked as a dentist for 40 years. For 33 years, we've practiced universal precautions to protect my employees. Now we have an airborne virus, and every business needs to adapt universal precautions. You have a responsibility to your employees and customers to do this. There's no rights or freedoms not to protect Americans. I'd like to briefly mention two of the many deadly misinformations about viruses and masks that I've heard on these presentations. Taiwan, who had 3 daily flights from Wuhan, their vice president, who is an epidemiologist, instituted a weekly mask allotment for all its citizens and had 7 deaths. If masks don't work, why did the countries that have the strictest universal masking control this virus? In fact, universal masking exceeded anybody's expectations. In Wisconsin now, it's 140 times more likely to get someone in Wisconsin, 140 times more likely to get COVID-19 than the crowded cities of the Far East. Getting a virus in your chest may cause long-term heart and lung damages. It's not a good idea, even if you're asymptomatic. The second argument I'd like to touch before I finish is I hear masks can't simply work because viruses are 2 microns and the pores are 3 microns. We're not trying to stop an individual virus. We're trying to stop aerosols and droplets that contain millions of viruses. Masks are designed to keep these aerosol droplets from getting into the air from the infected person. And if you use the snowflake analogy, they're not designed to stop the individual snowflake. They're designed to stop the snowball that has 1 million snowflakes. The blatant disinformation sites that put this argument out know it's a blatant lie, but use code words like, this is just common sense. In dentistry, we do this demonstration. We take red decay dye, swish it around our mouth, put it in our mouth, and then cough. And what you see is that all that aerosol is trapped by the mask. It's not getting through. To conclude, if Russia dropped a nuclear bomb on us and killed 150,000 Americans, we would react. Russia is dropping a cyber warfare disinformation bomb throughout Facebook each day, spreading like viruses, using posts on anti-vaccine websites and folks on the fringe of our political system. The U.S. Army spring quarterly officers magazine equated this disinformation as a virus being virtually spread through social media, like Representative Schraw's websites, and that's the quarterly publication for officers. The healthcare community, we want business open. We want the rights and freedoms that universal masking is allowed in Taiwan. You can go to movies, you can go to sporting events. We want all to be safe. We want teens need to get back to school. If we treat this as a public health problem, first, schools can open safely and businesses will get back customers they lost to online shopping. I doubt if when you became board members, you saw yourself as the frontline soldiers fighting Russian disinformation wars on political Facebook sites of your local state representatives. Now you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments, sir. Next, we'll call on David Lautenschlager. And if you could please state your name and address for the record, sir.
Hi, my name is David Lautenschlager, and I live in Winnebago at 731 Pine. I am here to speak in favor of Brian Defferting's referendum that he's putting forward in the legalization process. I think it's high time that we get on board with this and stop jeopardizing our citizens and our police officers through this course of action that has caused multiple casualties and ruined tons of families. If we truly want to support our police officers, we need to take this off of their plate and put it where it belongs. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for your comments. Next, I'll call on Katie Shirl. Please go ahead, and if you could state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Katie Shirl. I live at 7529 Sunburst Lane, Neenah, Wisconsin. It's actually the town of Clayton.
Thank you.
I'm here tonight about the United to Amend resolution that's being proposed by Mike Norton and Stephanie Spellman. I'm the chair of the Neenah Menasha United to Amend. I started with the group in 2013. In 2014, I organized and ran the Neenah Menasha petition drives. Both of them made it to the ballot. Menasha voted on it and it passed with 80%. Neenah was 79%. In 2017, my town board unanimously passed it. They agreed that money should not be influencing our politics as it does. And in 2017, Fox Crossing voted on it. I helped with that one also, and that passed at 81%. I would like the county board to consider putting this on the county as a county vote in November. Oshkosh, and Cheryl Hansen is here, was going to organize the city of Oshkosh, but the pandemic kind of, threw that out, and Mike wanted to run with this on the county. So we're hoping that the county would consider this. Over 160 communities in Wisconsin have already passed this, and there's other organizations as well. And our legislators are not looking or listening to us and letting the state vote on it. 20 states have already called for a constitutional amendment to change Citizens United. We just want a voice. Let the people vote on it, and we're hoping another community, as the county, would put pressure on our legislators. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else from the public who wishes to speak on any item on this evening's agenda or any item under county jurisdiction? I'll call next on Ed Hudick. We're just working to unmute your mic, sir. Mr. Hudak, are you able to unmute your mic? For some reason, we are unsuccessful on our end.
Does that help?
Yes, please, sir,
Okay.
if you could state your name and address for the record.
Okay. Ed Hudak, 1207 Skyview Drive in Neenah, Wisconsin.
Thank you.
Fine. I am sort of shocked, actually, to see these referendums being introduced in the middle of a pandemic. We have a lot of serious issues in front of us, and all of a sudden we see these things being pushed forward onto the citizens of Winnebago County. I suspect what we're dealing with, especially with the pot referendum, is an attempt to gin up the people to come out to vote, which is fine. I have no problems with that. But it's taken out of the Democrat playbook, which is to encourage as much as they can this type of approach. They've done it in other counties and they're trying to do it in Winnebago now. We do not need more pot in front of us and easy access to it. It's easy to go and look at the literature and see the kind of terrible effects it has on children and the kinds of stuff that they have access to all of these things. And I don't think it's something we should be promoting. I'm quite shocked even that some of the supervisors feel as though it's something that should be put forth. After all, the group that I'm looking at now, the members, the supervisors, this is nonpartisan, yet they're taking this from the Democrat playbook. And I'm really shocked to see this. And I really don't understand why this is taking place. But it's before you, and I would encourage you to vote against, especially this particular referendum. If we look at the kinds of effects that it has on children, we're trying to discourage smoking. Why would we pass this particular item? We see the kind of dangers that smoking and the kind of damage it does to, especially the young. And now we have some of the supervisors say, oh, we've got to get this out. Again, I'm asking the supervisors not to vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your comments. Next, I'll call on, the name is Sue Vett. I'll go ahead and unmute your mic. And if you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
Okay, my name is Sue Overton Walker. I live at 5355 Ivy Lane in the township of Oshkosh.
Thank you.
And I would like to speak to the THC marijuana referendum. I think that it's good to have an advisory referendum so we gauge people's how they feel about it, because being an older person and I've actually changed my opinion on some of these things over the years, having seen what the opioid epidemic has caused and having close friends who have chronic pain and stuff. I think that it's good to at least have an advisory on it so that we can gauge people's response, and so that possibly it would be at least legalized, that we can do research on it so we can determine, you know, if it's really going to work or not. But from what I've read different places, it has possibilities, because there's possibilities of extracting extracts out that help medically but won't make you high and stuff. So I really think that we should have this referendum as an advisory on the ballot. And I guess that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, we'll call on Kristen. And if you could please state your full name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Kristen Walker. I live in Wauwatosa now, but I grew up in Oshkosh on my family's dairy farm. I'm sorry.
Please go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you. I would just like to state my support for Brian Defferding's cannabis advisory referendum. I believe it is to the benefit of everyone to allow citizens to vote on this referendum, because if the people do not get the chance to express their beliefs on the matter, are the people really being represented, and do they really have a say? Even the state of Mississippi is allowing people to vote on marijuana legalization, and we all know that Mississippi isn't necessarily thought of as the forefront of things like this, but if even they're allowing it, then I think that we should too. Additionally, there are many benefits to supporting legalization, from criminal justice reform to compassionate healthcare. This is not at all a partisan issue. It's an issue of well-being for many different reasons. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next speaker is Dan Shirl. If you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Dan Shirl, and I live at 7529 Sunburst Lane in Neenah.
Thank you.
I am in support of the referendum for the cannabis. I believe there are many good uses for it. I find it offensive that we are making this a partisan issue. I think it is a referendum that gives people a voice. And anytime you want to stifle people's voices, it is wrong. There's nothing wrong with having the people decide what they feel is right. Cannabis is not a gateway drug. It is not. And there's many, many proven medical things that you can do with the marijuana. And why would we stifle that in favor of opioids? So I really think we need to let the people have a voice, and I support this wholeheartedly. I'm running for a state assembly, and I support full legalization of cannabis. So there's nothing wrong with letting the people have a say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next, I will call on Shirl Hansen. If you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Shirl Hansen. I live on Arboretum Drive in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I am also here to support Mike Norton and Stephanie Spellman's resolution number 55 regarding a referendum on our November ballot with regard to advising our state how we feel in Winnebago County about big money in politics and about corporations having a bigger say in what our legislators decide than you and I do with our small donations. We had originally tried to set this up for an Oshkosh referendum. Unfortunately, we were not able to continue with signature gathering. All of you supervisors should have gotten a packet of information from me. I dropped it off at the county clerk's office on January 10th. It has a letter and a whole lot of information. If you look at the one chart that shows you outside spending, in 2010, Citizens Action was passed. In 2012, outside spending, not including political committees, hit $1 trillion. I can only imagine what that is now. I certainly hope the board will consider allowing the citizens of Winnebago County to express their opinion on this referendum and pass that information on to the state. As Katie said, there's been 20 states already passed the resolution, and we've had 164 communities in Wisconsin. I included that list in your packet of information. You will notice that a lot of those communities swing one way or the other politically. Clearly, this is a nonpartisan issue. So hopefully you've had a chance to look through the information I provided, and you will vote to allow this referendum to proceed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next, I'll call on Chris Teagarden. If you could go ahead and unmute your mic.
Oh,
there you go.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, please go ahead and state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you. My name is Chris Teagarden, 4116 Wedgwood Avenue, Wedgwood Drive, Appleton, Wisconsin, 54913. I am not a resident, but I am the former mayor of Edgewater, Colorado, the first municipality in the world to codify and regulate recreational cannabis. And I am also the executive director of Northern Wisconsin NORML, and I am also director of government affairs of Higher Yields Consulting, which is a vertically integrated cannabis consulting company. We are a small company. We're not corporate. I'll make that clear. I am in support of Brian Defferding's resolution for the main purpose of giving constituents a voice on matters of policy, especially when it's directed toward the partisan politics that are involved in our state level. I am not a big fan of partisan politics right now, and I don't think cannabis should be part of that conversation. That being said, professionally, I would love for anybody to get information from Mr. Defferding that I can hand out any kind of information on the cannabis industry, its business practices, its implementation, or the regulatory structure thereof, or compliance structure within state and local communities. Also, tons of impact studies that I have out of Colorado that can debunk many myths of what we're hearing. On a personal level, I want to see it passed and legalized in Wisconsin. I've been there, I've done that, it's coming. I don't like to see this as a partisan thing, but what I am also seeing as well is where are the thoughts of the enlightened principles of limited government, of individual choice and responsibility. That is important to me, is to make sure that the government is limited and there's individual choice and responsibility. And the war on drugs does neither, especially in cannabis. So I am just encouraging folks to really look at what liberty means, not only for the individual, but for communities, because liberty is not always comfortable. And if you want to make it comfortable, that's not really liberty. So I appreciate Mr. Defferding's commitment to making sure that his constituents' voice is heard on a non-binding resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next, I'll call on Lydia Christensen. If you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi there, my name is Lydia Christensen. My address is 1045 Greenwood Court, Oshkosh, Wisconsin.
Thank you.
The two resolutions that I'm interested in here tonight is first the resolution on legalization of cannabis. I personally believe that cannabis has extremely powerful aspects in the terms of reinvigorating the soil, building new textiles and markets that can grow from the ground up. We also have the responsibility as people to transcend this political divide and let one another decide how we feel about this as a community. I'm a little nervous because I'm not good at speaking, but I want to make sure that everybody understands that there are been decades of research against the reasoning behind marijuana prohibition. And if we don't take the moves to at least give the people the ability to make these decisions on their own, then we go down the same path that we went down with alcohol prohibition. And it wasn't a pretty sight. So that's my thoughts on cannabis. And my second, the resolution that I wanted to speak on was for the Wisconsin Unite to Amend. We have a ridiculous amount of money that controls our politicians. The money prevents politicians from even voting along their own party lines. So I'm also in support of that resolution. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next, I'll call on Tom Snyder. Supervisor Snyder, is public comments right now, or is there someone else who wishes to speak on that Zoom call?
It's a public comment, Mr. Chairman.
Please, go ahead then.
My name is Tom Snyder, 6450 Breeze Street in Winnebago, Wisconsin, and I am a supervisor for District 35. I don't know how many of the rest of us are willing to share our personal experiences, but I have to admit that I did a lot of personal research on marijuana in '67 in the Philippines and in '68 in Vietnam. And obviously, it's been genetically modified since then. But I can tell you from Vietnam, if I was drunk and the rockets started coming in, I was still drunk. If I was high and the rockets started coming in, as soon as the adrenaline hit, it was as if I'd never touched it. So I obviously believe in letting the people decide whether this should be legalized or not. And it obviously needs a lot more research, but I'll tell you what, from my personal experience and research, I find nothing wrong with it. I'm here today. I think I'm still cogent and have all my faculties as a 74-year-old guy would have it, but I'm totally in favor of Brian's amendment. So resolution, I'm sorry. So thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments. Next, I will call on Shelby's iPhone. If the individual on Shelby's iPhone could please state their name and address for the record and then proceed.
Hi, thank you. My name is Shelby Mylock, and I'm at 731 Pine Street in Winnebago. I am absolutely 100% in support of Brian Defferding's motion to legalize marijuana. I think that this is absolutely a people's choice, and criminalizing it really has not done anything good for plenty families, including myself. I think that, to second the last comment, I'd rather everyone kind of sit down and not drink a beer and instead do something different. And I think that cannabis could be one of those areas, in addition to the medical benefits that we have been able to discover. I think that there's plenty of research to be done. And looking at, if anybody has a concern about the addiction side of it or negative impacts that it could have for children, I think that there are other ways to fix that, because corrections and criminalizing it doesn't fix it anyway. It just kind of pushes, a record in the face, and then makes it harder to get jobs and get, apartments and all of the other things. So I think there are plenty of other ways that we can combat the negatives that could potentially come from this. But I think ultimately it is the people's choice. And I think that for medicinal purposes, I think that it should absolutely be taken off the table as a criminal issue. So 100% in support of Brian's motion. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next, I will call on the individual at Smith's Pharmacy. If you could please go ahead and state your name and address for the record. Please go ahead.
Hi, my name is Kayla. Address is 820 De Pere Street, Menasha, Wisconsin 54952. I have Kaifa here. We both work at Smith Pharmacy, and we're both for legalizing medical marijuana. We would like to keep it at least in a more of a control safety environment, where it can be like where it's coming from, it's third-party testing, making sure that it is safe for individuals, and having more control over who gets it, and its safety, especially for children as well. And that way we can monitor it and safely have more education on it as well. More trials and stuff with patients. What I do at Smith Pharmacy, I actually educate the public on CBD, and we have seen a lot of promising results, a lot of positive results with CBD, especially when we do our own third-party testing, making sure our products and where they're coming from are also safe as well.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next, I'll call on Libby F. from Nina. If you could please go ahead and state your name and address for the record, please.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Great. My name is Libby Falk. I live at 410 Corey Lane in Nina. And I'd like to speak in support of both Resolution 55 to limit money in government and the referendum for the legalization of cannabis. On the cannabis front, the biggest thing to me really comes down to criminal justice. It is absolutely insane to me that we are spending money incarcerating people for possession of small amounts of marijuana. What a waste. That really needs to stop, and this is a step toward that. In terms of money in politics, I know we are all familiar with this one in all of the municipalities and counties where this has been discussed, where it's passed with, a large majority of the vote. I think it is at very least we need to be giving people in our community the opportunity to have that vote as well. And when it comes down to it, these are both opportunities to get a referendum on the ballot and let people have their say. And there is nothing wrong with that. We should be supporting both of those things. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next speaker is Rebecca Reichman. And if you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Rickman. I reside at 8464 Pioneer Road in Larson. I'd like to express my support for the authorization of the referendum regarding the legalization and decriminalization of cannabis in the state of Wisconsin. So cannabis prohibition as it exists in Wisconsin today is just not enforceable. The black market of cannabis is huge, and since other states around us have legalized it, such as Illinois and many others, none of the money being spent on it, which is a lot of money, is coming back to our communities. Instead, we are spending hundreds of thousands of dollars to arrest and incarcerate people for the possession of small amounts of marijuana that are non-harmful whatsoever. This is a social justice issue as well. Black and Latino cannabis users are arrested at significantly higher rates for possession just because they're in more concentrated and low-income, high-crime areas, while white users just typically get away with it, especially at a younger age, despite using it at a similar rate. So because of this, minority families and communities in our state are suffering. Legalization is also a public health issue. Legalizing cannabis would allow regulations to be placed on the amount of THC being sold at a time and the purity of the product. It's also important to note that despite propaganda, marijuana is not a gateway drug, and a majority of its users do not go on to use harder or more dangerous drugs. THC, the compound in cannabis, is also used for a variety of health purposes. It greatly reduces pain, and it's an excellent and non-addictive substitute for the opioids that we have such a big problem with in the state. It's also been used and prescribed to treat nausea in patients undergoing chemotherapy, and as an appetite stimulant for patients with AIDS. So that pretty much wraps up my statement on the issue, and thank you guys for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Seeing no other calls from the public, I'll offer again, is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on any item on the agenda or any item under county jurisdiction? I'll say again, is there anyone who wishes to speak? I believe there's one individual. We're trying to locate him. I believe his name is Joshua. Very good. We found you. So please, sir, go ahead and state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, sir. You'll have to excuse me one moment. So my name is Joshua Rosenkrantz. I am, however, not a resident of Winnebago County. I would just like to say that I think this is a conversation that is a very excellent one to be had, but what I think helps this sort of conversation, as I'm calling from Portage County to be precise, is a perspective on the history of the subject. I have in my, right behind you folks, in terms of the history of the plant, we need to understand that this drug has been used by humans since 8000 BC. So for quite a while, humans have been, using this drug. Also, I apologize, my microphone is very sensitive. As I was saying, this drug that I actually have here has been used since 8000 BC. So we've had this for a long time, and humans have been using it since then. However, it wasn't until the 1930s when Harry Anslinger actually enforced what was called the Marijuana Tax Act, essentially enforcing prohibition onto the plant marijuana. This certainly is a bipartisan issue, but we all need to recognize that the reason why Harry Anslinger prohibited this drug was specifically due to race. He can be quoted several times in saying that the reason marijuana should be made illegal is because it makes African-American men, I use that phrase in lieu of a more, derogatory term, feel as though they are better than white people, essentially. So Harry Anslinger enforced marijuana prohibition strictly to further subjugate minorities in America. That is a simple, basic fact of history. That is neither left nor right, not even centrist. It happened. That's history. History doesn't care about your feelings. I would know. I used to study history. So in terms of this being a subject that is partisan, it most certainly is not. The history doesn't show that, neither does the science. In terms of overall pharmacology, in order to overdose on marijuana, you need to be able to smoke at least 1,000 joints worth in order to elicit an overdose, what's called a lethal dose. That is exponentially greater than the lethal dose required for alcohol or even cigarettes. Furthermore, I understand that there is some sort of talk about the medical side. The medical side is very valuable. I work with children here in Portage County, and children are more often prescribed drugs like Adderall amphetamine, which is roughly 1 hydrogen atom away from being methamphetamine, or benzodiazepines, which are very addictive hypertension, anti-seizure drugs. So if we want to talk about impacts of drug health, we need to consider the legal drugs that we're prescribing. A drug is nothing more than basic atoms that have been bonded together by chemical bonds. It is neither good nor bad, it just exists. So the idea that this drug, which is right here, which has been used by humans for 10,000 years, roughly, as a bad drug does not make any empirical or objective sense. So, oh, and also as a closing point, I'm sorry I've taken up your time. I understand I am not a member of this community, but Portage County did have a referendum on this exact same thing. It passed and the sky has not fallen. I can tell you that as I am standing right here in the heart of Stevens Point, and I am still 100% alive. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next, I'll call on Aaron Wojciechowski. If you could please state your name and address for the record, please.
Thank you, Chairman Ramos. My name is Aaron Wojciechowski. I'm a resident at 813A West New York Street in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Live in District 16, I believe still, maybe right outside of there. I'm here to speak in support of the Money in Politics referendum. I think that needs to be passed, but I wanted to spend my time speaking on the referendum having to do with legalization of cannabis. I believe it was in 2018 that I brought forward the similar resolution to get that on that ballot, and that did not pass. We had a great discussion, but it seemed that a lot of it was overtaken by personal opinions on marijuana itself. And, I could go on about, my personal feelings towards it, and we could go about the science and how this isn't a Republican versus Democrat debate, because quite frankly, there are states where Republicans control that have passed full legalization, and they are doing just fine. And it's actually starting to become more of a bipartisan issue in the state legislature, with legislators on both sides of the aisle working together to see if they can pass something. But I think what this resolution does, most importantly, is give people in Winnebago County a voice on the issue. I think we can talk about whether we support it or not, the merits on the resolution, whether you like marijuana personally, but that shouldn't get in the way of ultimately what this resolution does, is give people in Winnebago County a voice on the issue. And if you do not like marijuana, you think it should never be legalized, that's fine. You can still vote yes on this, and then use that vote during the referendum to vote against it. I think we talk about doing research and getting people's information on this. I think this is one of the best ways we can gauge people's information. And it's really good information for state legislators to look at this and say, hey, Winnebago County supports this or doesn't support this. So I'm asking that please, when you have this debate, to keep that in mind, to please keep, your personal opinions out of this, and really focus on letting people in Winnebago County have a voice in the matter. I do support the resolution and hope that you support it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, I'll call on the individual on Bonnie's iPhone. If you could please go ahead and state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi there, I'm Bonnie Miller. I reside at 674 Boyd Street, Oshkosh, Wisconsin. I am absolutely for the legalization of marijuana. It has so many benefits, whether people see them or not because of their biased opinions. Alcohol has been legal forever, yet it is still legal, and it has been destroying families for years. If marijuana or CBD would have been legal before, I'm sure there's probably a lot of us that have other issues, anxiety, PTSD, just a couple, that would absolutely benefit. Someone who has an eating disorder. My dad could have benefited from that when he was dying of 3 forms of cancer. I shouldn't have had to have gone and bought it illegally for my dad's benefit. My dad has been gone now 10 years and it still isn't legal. It is a cash crop. A few years ago, my daughter had been seeing a counselor since she was 4 years old. She's now in her 20s. due to the medication games in which it is that doctors play, not knowing the full effects of the medications in which it is that they are providing to those kids. I almost lost my daughter. My daughter is now medication free and using CBD for her extreme anxiety, and she is functioning beautifully. It's not just for that benefit, it's also for the benefits. It's a cash crop. There's textiles that can be made from these. If you don't want to smoke it, you could eat it. You could do CBD. There's so many other ways. You don't have to be so square in the aspect of when you're looking at it, just because you don't like it and you're against it, doesn't mean that it doesn't work for somebody else. You guys may go out and have a drink. I personally don't care to drink because I've seen what alcohol does. I grew up with that. Maybe if my dad would have smoked some back in the day, maybe he would have been less abusive. Maybe he would have been a little easier to talk to. Communication can flow easily if people open their minds and not be so closed-minded to the whole idea of. I'm absolutely for, whether it's for someone who has Parkinson's to help them stop with their shakes, whether it's for somebody who has a severe seizure disorder with epilepsy, or someone in which it is that is against doctors and medication like me because of the traumatic abuse that I had gone through from birth on. So for me, it is huge and it is personal, because I shouldn't have to go out and illegally purchase something and risk a chance of me getting busted because it's petty. It is absolutely ridiculous. Mother Earth grows it. It is a freaking plant. It is a flower. I just don't understand why this has dragged out for so long. Why does Wisconsin always have to be last at everything? I'm sorry, I'm a little heated about it, but it's very, very close to me. I wanted to go see a counselor. I went to go see a counselor. I told him I prefer not to take medication, because he told me that I should go see a trauma therapist or a psychiatrist, and I know exactly what it is that psychiatrist prescribed because I've gone through that with my daughter. I will not. Medication doesn't always react the same way from one person to the next, and I'm not interested in taking that chance with the medication game. That's just my opinion and my beliefs, and I certainly hope that this is taken into consideration. I appreciate your time and for you listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Seeing no other call-ins, I'll ask one more time. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on any item on the agenda or anything under county jurisdiction? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close that portion of the agenda, and we'll move on to the next item. That's reports from committees, commissions, and boards. Any supervisor who has reports from a committee, commission, and board, please raise your Zoom hand and I will call you in succession. So first, I will call on Supervisor Fari. Please go ahead, Supervisor Fari. You have the floor.
Hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, we can hear you well.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to announce that as of today, the State Conservation Board approved the Winnebago County Land and Water Resource Management Plan. The plan had been worked for a couple of years and it's now completed, and it will be on the agenda of the LCC meeting on Thursday. If the committee approves it, it will be forwarded to the county board. What is it, August 18th, I believe? In addition to that, the executive committee for the Winnebago Waterways Lake Management Plan, the county plan, Winnebago, Fond du Lac, and Calumet met, and we have approved the plan. That will also be brought forward to the Land Conservation Committee on Thursday for their review and hopefully approval, and will be brought to the county board either in the next meeting in August or September. So I'm pleased to announce those two very major documents are in the process of being finished and brought to the county board. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Supervisor Fari, and thank you for the update. Next, I will call on Supervisor Gabbard. Please
Can you
go
hear
ahead,
me?
Supervisor. Yes, we can hear you well now.
Okay, just a couple of good things about aviation. Just wanted to keep the board updated. The West Wing has been demoed and the site is being cleaned up for excavation for the new facility. Also, and you can stop out there anytime and see what's going on. And let's see, what else did I have? Oh, Oshkosh Corp has parked their vehicles out there. We signed a lease with them through the end of December to park vehicles to raise a little money to help our budget situation out. So they have parked out there on the tarmac and everything is good to go. We have a lease with them through the end of December for $26,000. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Gabbard. And I will say I was remiss at the last meeting not to thank in particular a number of folks, because we did have that groundbreaking the week prior to our last meeting. And certainly I want to thank Director Shirl and all the airport staff for all their efforts. It was a wonderful ceremony. I know the facility staff involved. Supervisor Gabbard was there. She also said some words. Our County Executive Harris was also there, among other folks, but certainly want to thank those folks for all their involvement and efforts in that. I see also Supervisor Shorsey. Please go ahead, Supervisor Shorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I
Thank
just
you.
wanted to report from the Emergency Management Committee that our mobile command unit is on schedule and we expect delivery later this month. So barring any, last minute things, but we saw pictures the other day at our meeting and it looks really, really good and sounds like it will serve our community very well.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey, and thank you for the update. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead and close that portion of the agenda. We'll move on to the next item, and that is County Executive's report. I'll call on Executive Harris. And if you could go ahead and unmute your mic, Executive Harris, we're having a little difficulty on our end unmuting it. Are you able to unmute your mic, Executive Harris? Clerk Ertmer, are you able to? Your mic is now open. Yes, it is. Please go ahead, Executive Harris.
I just want to comment, you have 5 resolutions on your agenda today that probably sound very foreign to all of you. And what they are, they're technical items needed for us to pull back the community development block grant monies that the state rolled into a single pool from all the counties. They kept it segregated where they would identify those as having come from our county. And if we can pull them back and use them for a project that fits within their rules, we can do that quite easily now. But if we wait much longer, those monies will be pulled with all the money statewide, and we'll have to compete with all the other counties to get those monies back. So in order to do that, first we identified some projects that met all the technical requirements, being in a low to moderate income census tract. And we're moving forward with that, but we discovered we had to make these 5 technical changes in order to comply with the rules imposed on those CDBG monies. So I would urge the board to support those items, and that's all I have for you tonight.
Thank you, Executive Harris. Moving on down to the next item on the agenda, and that's the County Board Chairman's report, followed by the County Board Chairman's appointment. So first, just to reiterate, Supervisor Conrad and Supervisor Gordon asked to be excused this evening. Also want to let everyone know and remind them that Supervisor Jim Weiss will be leaving the board simply because he has moved or will be moving out of the district, his district. That's official as of August 7th. We have received some interested candidates already. As many of you know from the past, there is a public announcement period that we need to conform with, and we are working to do that as well. Also just want to thank Supervisor Weiss for your time working with you on the board. You've always been very professional in your demeanor, very inquisitive, and very wonderful to work with over those 2 years. So just wanted to thank you again for your time and service on this board. And then I wanted to touch base and give a couple comments, I guess, to go on my soapbox a little bit. As you know, I do from time to time, but I'm also doing it because of some discussions I've had with some individuals over the past couple weeks, and at least to give you a little bit of my perspective on some of the things and why I do certain things, frankly. And one of those items that has come up, and I've had a variety of discussions with individuals, is in regards to actually the board agenda. And I wanted to give you some perspective on that and how it intertwines with our board rules. So first of all, what I would tell you is when I initially sought being county board chairman about a little over 2 years ago, I used the words for myself to try to work to be transparent, to try to work to be fair, and to try to be inclusive. In my view, to be inclusive, that means you consider all the voices of the board. I technically have the latitude to decide the board agenda, but that doesn't mean it's in the best interest of this board for me to do that. I believe that should happen only in rare exceptions. The power should be with this board, not with the county board chairman. The way I see this is that I facilitate the work of the board. The way I see it is that I do everything possible that the voice of every single member on this board is heard. That's how I see it, as a facilitator more than someone that determines or dictates what would actually be on this board agenda. Any other way of doing it, in my view, is more controlling rather than being inclusive. And I told you all from the get-go, I would work to be inclusive. So that's partly why I do this. It's a big part of it, frankly, but there are other reasons too, and I just want to share those a bit with you as well. We do follow county board rules, as you know, right? Every governing body has them. Well, if you look at your county board rules, and you look at the rule 7.0 in regards to handling of resolutions and ordinances, and you look at 7.1, it says every written resolution shall be prepared in block form and shall be as concise as possible and shall have attached to it the name of the committee, commission, or board, and or the names of the supervisors introducing it. So what that rule clearly states is that a resolution can come from a board or commission, or it can come from an individual member. Also in that rule, it does not state that you need an affirmative vote from a committee to bring something to this board. Now, I'll be honest, I've seen that in other governing bodies. I've been on governing bodies where that is the case. And frankly, if it is the will of the board in its rules that it so desires, I think that is very reasonable. But once again, that's putting the power to the board to decide that, not one individual for the whole board. It further states in our rules under the written agenda, under 8.8, any item on the agenda for consideration by the board may be withdrawn at any time before action is taken on it, but only by its sponsor or by a committee, the committee chair, or designated alternate in his or her absence. Once again, it specifically refers to its sponsor, and its sponsor would be an individual board member. I'm giving you that context so you know why I'm doing what I'm doing. I can totally appreciate that individuals might disagree with that, and that, frankly, I think that's wonderful in a board. That's what we need to have. But if we as a board feel we need to go in a different direction, then what I simply recommend is that an individual offer up a board rule modification and let the board vote and decide if it wants to govern itself in that way. And if it's passed by a majority of the board, then the power of the board has spoken and determined how we should address resolutions. But that is not the case in the way our rules stand currently. I also wanted to talk just very briefly, and then I promise I'll get off my soapbox. Way back in March, almost 5 months ago, I talked about, I think it was the March 17th meeting, as a matter of fact, I think I can remember it now. I talked about, and I used the term, I lamented the fact that there was a use during this pandemic of the term social distancing. And I commented at that time that I thought a more appropriate term would be physical distance. And I certainly still believe that today. The reason I bring that up is because if you go back and roll the tape, so to speak, what I was really saying is that during this pandemic, in so many ways, we need to be more socially connected than ever, even if it means virtually. And we have to do everything possible to remain socially connected virtually, or socially connected in ways with masks or social distancing. But that's not really my message, frankly, right now about masks and social distancing. My message is this: we're 5 months into this pandemic. We've all been going through this shared experience together, and it's a difficult one. I think we all can agree with that. And frankly, we're all starting to experience a little COVID fatigue. I think that's fair that everyone could probably say that more or less for each other. However, we all are going to need to continue to work through this together no matter what as we go forward. So I say all that because I think we need to remind ourselves, frankly, that we just got to be kind to each other. We just got to look at each other and understand that we all come from a different perspective, but all with good intentions. It's hard, frankly, during this time sometimes as we get fatigued emotionally, professionally, frankly, physically, psychologically, really. But that means it's all the more important time for us each to take a step back, including myself at times, and say, how can I be a little kinder, a little gentler, a little more understanding for those around me? I believe that's the only way we're going to get through it. I've seen, and I think you all have seen over the past months, some examples, whether that's locally, whether that's here on this board, whether that's statewide or nationally, where that's not the case. And I think we all need to take that step back and ask ourselves, simple thing, how do we all want to be treated, right? How do we want our children to be treated? Our mothers, our fathers, our grandparents to be treated? I think we all know that answer. So I guess what I pledge is to do the same to you all. I'd ask for you all to try to work and remind yourselves of that same civility, and frankly, for everyone around you. It's not easy. I know that. I know it's not easy for me, frankly. But yet we need to continue to remind ourselves, nonetheless, to do the best we possibly can in regards to that. So with that, I'm going to go ahead, and I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to say those words. And I'll step down now off my soapbox. So we'll move on down to the next item. and that is County Board Chairman's appointment. And that's for the East Central International Trade, Business, and Economic Development Council. Paul Sundquist, 222 Hudson Avenue, Oshkosh. Amy Albright, Oshkosh Convention and Visitors Bureau, 100 North Main Street, Oshkosh. I ask for a motion to approve the appointment. You can open up your mic and say motion to approve. Any supervisor?
This
Is
is
there a-
Tom Snyder, District 35, motion to approve.
There's a motion to approve. Is there a second? If you could, Supervisor Shorsey has seconded. Since we do have a motion and a second, all those in favor, you can open up your mic, Supervisor, and say aye. Any opposed, please do open up your mic and say nay. Supervisor Powers, I believe, is saying, correct, did you say? Supervisor Powers was a nay? Supervisor Powers, I believe, was a no. I just want to clarify.
No, I'm trying to vote yes, but I couldn't unmute myself. You still had me muted. Thank you. I'm voting for those appointments.
I apologize, Supervisor Powers. We're definitely having some technical difficulty with the mute and unmute. And believe it or not, it's occurring even without us sometimes taking action. So I appreciate everyone's patience with it. Thank you, Supervisor Powers.
Tom Borchert has got his hand raised.
And Supervisor Borchert, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand and I'll call on you. Supervisor Borchert.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Please go ahead. Yes, we can hear you now, Supervisor Borchert.
It's not working as far as the muting and unmuting. I can't unmute myself.
Yes, so we're trying to do that on our end. We're having a little trouble. I apologize. Were you in favor of that or opposed, Supervisor Borchert?
I was in favor.
Thank you, Supervisor.
It'll be a thumbs up or thumbs down, okay?
That works for me. And what I'd ask for the whole board, if we're having difficulty for your vote, all right, what I'd ask you to do to raise your Zoom hand, you will come up to the top of the screen, and then we'll work to see if we can open up an individual mic and get a clarification. If I don't see you raising your Zoom hand, I will assume that the vote, as we understand it, is correct, okay? Let's really do the best we can. So that motion carried. So moving on down then to resolutions. We have 7 of them this evening. Supervisor Shorsey has her hand. I'll go ahead and unmute your mic. Please go ahead, Supervisor Shorsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This actually, I've had my hand up for a little bit here. And it's tied with your comments. And I just wanted to respond to that. And first of all, I have utmost respect for you and the way you operate things. But I think one of the big issues for me, and I've heard it from colleagues, is the whole time management of meetings related to, and that of course, time management equals agenda management. And especially when we have things that are not in our jurisdiction coming and taking valuable time. I don't think any of us are going to tolerate the kind of meetings we've been having. And it's been a trend. And the reality is there's only so much time to do business. We need to do business that is within our jurisdiction first, and then whatever comes along, that's up to how you deal with things. But I do think that time is a problem, and that needs to be addressed in some positive way, so we're not sitting in meetings for hours and hours and hours on end. So thank you for hearing me.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. I'll call on Supervisor Albrecht. Please go ahead, Supervisor Albrecht.
I was just trying to second that before.
Thank you, appreciate it. And I will just add, because I wanted to add one other thing on my comments. Actually, frankly, and I'm glad you're bringing it up, Supervisor Shorsey, because I also wanted to remind individuals, we do have our board rules, but we also have Robert's rules. So as we debate, all of you have complete latitude to decide whether we debate and how long. If you do not approve or recommend something that's on the agenda, you can call in actually, and you can make a motion to postpone indefinitely, frankly, at any time. And if the board affirmatively votes to postpone it indefinitely, then we are done with debate on that resolution. So I just wanted to let you know that there are Robert's rules that give you the power, the board the power, to decide how long we actually debate an individual item. So I'm glad you did bring that up, Supervisor Shorsey. I'll now call on Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just say that some of the last few meetings have been more than difficult, but I think that government is messy and government is trying, and government can be cumbersome sometimes. And as much as I didn't like hearing many of the comments that were made in the last few meetings by members of the community, we have an obligation, I feel, because we were elected, to listen to what they have to say, even when they're being foul-mouthed, even when they're being angry, even when they're being uninformed. We are supposed to listen to them, and that's what that portion is for at the beginning, is for public comments. And whether we like it or not, that's part of what we have to do. So I guess I'm disagreeing with Supervisor Shorsey. I don't like a 5-hour and 59-minute meeting either, but people had something they wanted to say. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers, and thank you, Supervisor Shorsey, as well. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll move once again to resolutions and ordinances. First resolution on the agenda is resolution number 05008-2020. Authorize Winnebago County to submit an application for community development block grant monies. For that, I will call on Supervisor Keller. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of resolution 05008-2020.
Second. There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 05008-2020. Any discussion from the board? If you could please raise your Zoom hand.
If there are any questions, Mr. Chairman, I would like to, I believe Jerry Bougie, the Director of Industrial Development Board, is on the line, and also Art Barr from our consulting firm is on the line. If there are any questions, thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Keller. I'll next call on Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead and speak.
Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome.
Mr. Chairman, I will vote for the suite of resolutions 50, 51, 52, and 53. Because I don't want to see Winnebago County lose $1 million of federal state money. But I have to observe that it is sad that with all the need to boost low and moderate income families with the community block grants, that the only shovel-ready program we have available that we can come up with is a county-wide highway project. That's a sad story on the state of our administration. But I'm going to vote for those because I don't want to see our county lose $900,000. And I want to thank Supervisor Keller for explaining to me what's going on there. And I'm sure when you get the planning director on, he'll explain it to everybody. Mr. Keller could do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on resolution 05008-2020? Seeing none, we'll do a voice vote. All those please in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed say no. That motion carried. And just so you know, the way each supervisor did that last vote, that worked perfectly. We were able to hear quite well the individual voices. That worked quite well. I just wanted to give you feedback so you know how it's working on both ends with that. So moving on down to the next resolution. That's resolution number 051-08-2020. Create a residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan. I'll once again call on Supervisor Keller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of resolution 051-08-2020.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 051-08-2020. Any discussion? Anyone who has discussion, raise their Zoom hand. I'll call on Supervisor Powers.
I'm sorry if my hand is up because I'm not trying to say anything.
Very good. Thank you, Supervisor Powers. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on resolution 051-08-2020? Seeing none, we'll once again do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. And if any are opposed and we can't hear you, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand on any of these. And that motion carried. So we're moving on now to resolution number 052-08-2020. Authorize the adoption of a citizen participation plan. Once again, I'll call on Supervisor Keller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for approval of 052-08-2020.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution 052-08-2020. Any discussion from any supervisor? Seeing none, we'll once again do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, that motion carries. Moving on to the second page, starting with ordinance number 053-08-2020. Repeal section 11.15, fair housing of the General Code of Winnebago County, and create section 11.16 of the General Code of Winnebago County to adopt a fair housing ordinance relating to the equal rights of all persons to fair housing and providing means for the implementation and enforcement thereof. For that, I will call on Supervisor Youngquist. We're just working to unmute. Please go ahead.
I move to approve ordinance 053-08-2020.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve ordinance number 053-08-2020. Any discussion from any supervisor, please go ahead and raise your Zoom hand, and I'll call on you in succession. I'll first call on Supervisor Norton. Please go ahead, Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Who specifically is going to be enforce these? I mean, A, who's going to investigate these, and who's going to enforce if there's any complaints? That's like one question.
I will call on either Supervisor Youngquist or I'll call on our Corporation Counsel, Mary Ann Miller. Corporation Counsel, would you be able to answer that question?
I would think so.
Testing, can you hear?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great. Yes, it would be the Affirmative Action Committee and or the Fair Housing Committee. I spoke with our consultant since he has worked with other communities in the past. And those are the two committees, specifically the Affirmative Action Committee, that would be handling any complaints.
Thank you, Corporation Counsel. I'll next call on Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I have to say logically follows what Corporation Counsel shared with us. But the problem is, I think this resolution ordinance is defective because you're replacing 11.15, and 11.15 fair housing includes enforcement agency. And if you're going to eliminate 11.15 and have 11.16, you're not going to have any enforcement. The Corporation Counsel said that the enforcement agency is affirmative action. But if you're going to eliminate 11.15, you're not going to have anybody enforcing it. So I think that you should send this back to the committee so they can rewrite the resolution, so that, the ordinance, so that we can have an appropriate consideration. Otherwise, I can't change it on the spur because I don't have enough details. I think the Corporation Counsel should comment on that. Take a look at the county code, 11.15.
Corporation Counsel?
Number 4, enforcement. There is no enforcement under 11.16.
And can you
Please
hear
go
me
ahead.
now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes, we had spoken with our consultant, and in order to access these federal funds, we have to go through a lot of hoops in order to basically satisfy HUD. And I'm sure Mr. Barr can comment on it. And I was asking why we even needed to do that. And the answer is that we have to dot I's and cross T's in the exact manner that HUD wants in order to basically not have our application rebuffed. And I think Mr. Barr, who's worked with the numerous communities, can probably expand on that. But that's the bottom line, Supervisor Eisen. We had to literally use magic words in order to have a fair shake at applying and getting access to these funds.
Thank you, Corporation Counsel. As I said earlier when I spoke at Resolution 50, this is a suite of resolutions and ordinance which I support. And if it takes eliminating enforcing this ordinance to get that $1 million, so be it.
Thank you,
So I would vote yes on approving changing 11.15 to 11.16. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Next, I'll call on Supervisor Albrecht.
I just wanted to comment on Mr. Eisen. He kind of withdrew what he was talking about, but if we don't go through with this, we'll lose hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Thank you, Supervisor Albrecht. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go to a vote. We'll go ahead and try to do a voice vote on this. All those in favor of ordinance number 053-08-2020, open up your mic and say aye.
Aye.
Any supervisor opposed, open up their mic and say nay. And that motion carries. Moving on down to the next resolution. That's resolution number 054-08-2020. Authorize Winnebago County to commit other funds for the 2019 Community Development Block Grant closed public facilities application related to Winnebago County's participation in the Community Development Block Grant Program. For that, I will once again call on Supervisor Keller.
Thank you, Chairman Ramos. I move for approval of resolution 054-08-2020.
Second. There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 054-08-2020. Any discussion from any supervisor, go ahead and raise your Zoom hand. Seeing none, we'll once again do a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, open up your mic and say nay. Or if you can't open up your mic, just raise your Zoom hand and then let us know. Seeing none, that motion carries. Moving on down to the next resolution. We have two more resolutions on our agenda. First one is resolution number 055-08-2020. Authorize the Winnebago County Clerk to publish a notice of referendum regarding the enactment of proposed legislation to support the passage of an amendment to the United States Constitution to reclaim democracy from the expansion of corporate personhood rights and the corrupting influence of unlimited political contributions and spending. For that, I will call on Supervisor Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move for the adoption of resolution 055-08-2020.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve resolution number 055-08-2020. Any discussion?
I'll be brief, Mr. Chairman. I'm bringing it forward because I went to a couple of the events where the group that had asked me to bring this forward. Big money is not just in state and national issues. It could come down to county issues, county board issues, and local races. County in Milwaukee County, they had county board races that were in six figures a couple years ago. I think it's been passed by a wide range of communities, over 164, from typical ones you might think, Dane County and the city of Madison to Lafayette, Greene, and Jackson County. So I think it gives the people another voice to express the concern about the money and the influence. And as you know, it's one of the states that passed it is Montana. In Montana, they were concerned that they made a whole documentary about how Republicans were against Republicans. So I just think it's a good way to let the people express their views and let the whole county do it this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Norton. Next speaker is Supervisor Nussbaum, followed by Supervisor Fari. Please go ahead, Supervisor Nussbaum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think this would be great. I would love to see it, but I don't think it's constitutional. I would like nothing better than to see Planned Parenthood not be able to fund politicians and then politicians fund Planned Parenthood. I think it would be a great thing, but I don't think it's constitutional. These people that run Planned Parenthood have constitutional rights, and I think that they would be violated. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Nussbaum. Next speaker is Supervisor Fari, followed by Supervisor Lenz. Please go ahead, Supervisor Fari. Your mic is open.
Okay, can you hear me, sir?
Yes, we can hear you well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. If I might have the liberty, I would like to address both Resolution 55 and 56 in general terms. Let me say the idea to go to referendum and allow the people that we represent to voice their opinion is in the best interest of this county, especially on important issues like this. And in addition to that, I would ask that the votes be taken as recorded votes on both these resolutions. I intend to support both of them. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Fari. We will honor that request. We had anticipated that in advance. Thank you, Supervisor Fari.
You're welcome.
Next, I'll call on Supervisor Lenz, followed by Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Lenz.
Thank you, Chairman Ramos. I just wanted to say a couple things. One, Unite to Amend has been working very hard on this. When I did some looking into it, I was amazed at how many communities that they've reached out to in order to see what people are feeling on it. I was also amazed on how long they've been working on this and how much effort they've been putting into it. In my opinion, it's a pillar of democracy right there, showing us what we should be doing as citizens to affect the world around us. The other point I wanted to speak to, Supervisor Nussbaum brought up was the constitutionality of it. The constitutionality of us letting the people speak on the ballot is absolutely in our powers. From my understanding, the people being able to cast a vote to speak for themselves, to my understanding, is also absolutely constitutional. The challenge we have is the Supreme Court did make a decision on Citizens Unite. And they said basically, as I understand it, that corporations are people and money is speech. And the only way for us to clean this mess up is to get our legislators to pass a federal bill so that the Supreme Court can review it and we can then better define the laws of the land. But we need to let our representatives in Washington know that we want them to do this so that they can prioritize things accordingly. And as many of us have can now feel and understand with the recent events at the county level, it's very hard to get a touch on everything that people feel amongst the communities. We've been overwhelmed recently and inundated with emails on one or two subjects. And it's hard for us to understand, what else is out there when we are getting overwhelmed with one or two topics. United to Amend has been out there trying to get this on the ballot because they believe and they have proven that when given the chance to speak on this, the people have an opinion. And I believe this is a nice formal way for us to give guidance to our federal representatives and to also open our government up and give people yet one more reason to go to the polls and vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Lenz. Next speaker, Supervisor Eisen, followed by Supervisor Powers.
You're muted, Paul. Paul, we can't hear you.
You can go ahead and unmute your mic, Supervisor Eisen.
Oh, there I go.
Your mic is now open, Supervisor Eisen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support the concise statement that is presented in the question. And I will vote for this. And I recommend that other supervisors support it as well.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. Next, we'll call on Supervisor Powers. Please go ahead, Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm voting in favor of this as well. The one thing I guess I'm speaking out against is pot shots made at Planned Parenthood. I was a virgin when I married, and I was faithful to one man for 41 years. When I suddenly found myself in a position where I had to be tested for HIV/AIDS, and my best friend's husband was a primary care physician. He said, you need 3 tests, 3 months apart, 2 months apart, and to make sure that you have not been infected with HIV. I went to Planned Parenthood. I had my testing done, and I was found to be non-reactive to HIV. Thank goodness. But Planned Parenthood was there for me when a virginal and faithful wife for 40 plus years needed Planned Parenthood for sexually transmitted disease that I was exposed to. So taking pot shots at Planned Parenthood is not high on my agenda. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers. Seeing no other call-ins, we're going to go ahead and go to a vote. Now, as a reminder, we will go to a roll call vote of this. So I'm going to ask the clerk to call on the supervisors by district in succession, starting with district number 1. When we start with district number 1, we'd ask that you open up your mic and say your vote. So once you hear the clerk say your district, open up your mic and say aye or nay. Okay, please go ahead, Clerk Ertmer. Supervisor Konecki, if you could please open up your mic and say aye or nay on resolution 055.
We had him here earlier.
Okay, we'll move to District 2.
Supervisor Brunn?
Nay.
Nay.
Thank you, Supervisor Brunn.
Supervisor Borchert?
Aye.
Supervisor Borchert is an aye in District 3. District 4, Supervisor Eisen.
Supervisor Eisen?
Aye.
Supervisor Eisen is an aye.
Supervisor Ramos?
Aye.
Supervisor Defferting?
Yes. Aye.
Supervisor Defferting is an aye in District 6.
Supervisor Lenz, District 7?
Aye.
Supervisor Newhoff, District 8?
Aye.
Supervisor Nussbaum, District 9?
Nay.
Supervisor Spellman, District 10?
Aye.
Supervisor Albrecht? District 11?
Supervisor Albrecht,
Aye.
he was an aye.
Okay, Supervisor Gabbard?
Supervisor Gabbard, if you could let us know your vote on resolution 055. Okay, we'll move to District 13.
Supervisor Binder?
Aye.
Supervisor Conrad is absent or excused. Supervisor Shorty?
Abstain?
Abstain. Supervisor Galante?
Aye.
Becky.
Supervisor Gordon is excused. Supervisor Wingren?
Supervisor Wingren, if you could open up your mic and provide your vote. Supervisor Wingren, your mic is open.
I'm trying.
Very good. We can hear you now.
This is Wingren.
We can hear you, Supervisor Wingren.
I tried to talk about other things you never recognized me before, so I got you now, evidently.
I certainly apologize.
I vote no.
No.
Thank you, Supervisor Wingren.
Supervisor Lautenschlager?
Yes.
Supervisor Norton?
Yes.
Supervisor Warnke?
Yes.
Supervisor Selmer?
Yes.
Supervisor Skellinger?
Aye.
Supervisor Buck?
Aye.
Supervisor Powers?
Aye.
Supervisor Locke?
Yep. Aye. Aye.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Supervisor Wise?
Supervisor Weiss?
Aye.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiss. And yes, Supervisor Locke, we did hear your vote. Thank you.
Supervisor Finch?
Aye.
Supervisor Youngquist?
Aye.
Supervisor Fari?
Aye.
Supervisor Rasmussen?
Aye.
Supervisor Keller?
Supervisor Keller?
Aye.
Thank you.
Supervisor Egan?
Aye.
Supervisor Ellis?
No.
Supervisor Snyder?
Supervisor Schneider?
Aye.
And
Thank you.
Supervisor Jones?
Aye.
We're tallying the vote, and just for clarification for everyone, each of these last two questions require a majority of those present for passage or failure.
Okay. So that's the other two. Okay, that means 36. Yes, yes.
So that motion passes with 27 ayes, 4 nays, and 1 abstention. So moving on down to the final resolution this evening. That's resolution number 056-08-2020. Authorize the Winnebago County Clerk to publish a notice of referendum regarding the legalization and decriminalization of cannabis in the state of Wisconsin. For that, I will call on Supervisor Defferding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And with your permission, I would like to speak on this too. I moved to approve resolution number 056-082-2020.
Second. There's a motion and a second. Please proceed, Supervisor Defferding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When I first brought this resolution forward to the Judicial and Public Safety Committee earlier this a couple months ago, I wanted to listen to some of the objections, and because I respect everyone's views, even those that oppose mine, and I want to get to know why they object to it. And in this particular case, one of the objections I heard was, do we need to put any issue as an advisory referendum? Should we just put everything up for an advisory referendum and not be supervisors? And I certainly don't disagree with that. In fact, for the most part, I do agree with that. No, we should not put every issue on the ballot. But there are exceptions to the rule. There are issues that, in fact, are not being properly represented and in dire need of being expressed at the ballot box because our elected officials are either too busy spatting over semantics, putting the issue on the back burner over and over again, or just simply not listening and ignoring their constituents. Cannabis, as it stands, is still illegal in this state. Does that mean the vast majority of voters prefer the plant to be illegal? No, absolutely not. And Wisconsin right now is an island. Cannabis is decriminalized in Michigan, Minnesota, and Illinois. It's fully legal in Illinois and Michigan. And so we're now, kind of painting ourselves in a corner. And in 2019, the last Marquette University Law School poll showed that the last 5 years, significantly more Wisconsinites have come to support legalizing marijuana. The poll now shows 59% support full legalization, with 83% supporting medical cannabis, while only 33% are in opposition. In November, voters in 16 Wisconsin counties, including Dane and Milwaukee, passed advisory-only referenda on legalization by wide margins. Nearly 1 million people voted in support of marijuana to become legal or for either medical or recreational use. Every one of the questions passed. So why is it still a crime? Is this really about representation, or is this more about officials thinking they know what's better for all of us and will impose their will on the general populace because they somehow feel we clearly are unable to save us from ourselves? I think that at the end of the day, right now, this is an election year, and we have our state legislator that they're still scratching their heads on this. They don't know how to approach this issue. They don't know. We get some people saying, "Well, I might be for legalizing for medical purposes, but not for recreational." Okay. Then you get those that say that they want to have it legal for both recreational and medical too. And then there are some of those that do say it should still be a punishable offense. This gives everyone a voice. This makes it easier for the state legislators to figure out how to craft legislation going forward. So, so what we're doing here is we're doing a favor for the people in the state legislature. We're showing them this is what the people in Winnebago County think. And then we can actually go forward and figure out if this is an issue that needs to be addressed. If we should change it, then how should we change it? So I know that there's a lot of people, I know that there are some people that have their own personal feelings in regards to legalizing cannabis. And, that's fine. You could still have that opinion. And this is a non-binding referendum. So I ask that everyone try to persuade people in the court of public opinion then. So there has been a lot of, and I'd like to address some of that too. I'd like to address some of those facts that have been put forward. And we did receive some facts that are from the Sheriff's Department, which I wound up getting personally from some law enforcement officers in the Sheriff's Department, which I found rather interesting and intriguing because I wasn't aware that the Sheriff's Department could actually act as a mail service for some supervisors. But there are some things that needed to be debunked, specifically when they point to the Rocky Mountain high intensity drug trafficking area. And that has been debunked by the senior researchers at the Brookings Institute. They have publicly described that as those reports as garbage. And they've noted that they're notorious for using data out of context and drawing grand conclusions from data that ultimately do not support the actual, does not support that. So, and there has been, right now we have 11 states that have decriminalized or legalized some form of legalization and decriminalization. And they have not seen any significant raise in violent crime. They've found no statistical long-term effects or short-term effects in regards to legalization. And of course, there are some worries in regards to regards to minors. And that's a legit concern. But there's the state of Colorado, Washington, all the other states, they have made sure that there's a huge education program for those that are in government schools and in private high schools to make sure that they're making the right choice and they're being responsible. And thus far, it has worked. There has been no statistics that support that there's been a lot of drug use in minors. In fact, if anything, it actually went down. So this is something that these are surveys that are done through the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, the National Bureau of Economic Research, the Prison Policy Institute, Vera Institute of Justice. These are well-known, reputable institutions. The American Journal of Public Health and the Journal of American Medical and Psychiatry Association. These are very reputable sources here, and they have no confirmation bias, in them. They're just simply approaching with the scientific method. So this is something where, at the end of the day, we're doing our state legislature a favor. We're saying, okay, let's figure out what the people think, and then we'll go forward from there. So, and with that, I so yield. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Defferty. Next speaker is Supervisor Konecki, followed by Supervisor Powers. Please go ahead, Supervisor Konecki.
Mr. Chairman, I'm for this resolution, but I would be for item B, legal for medical purposes only.
Thank you, Supervisor Konecki. Next speaker is Supervisor Powers, followed by Supervisor Shorsey. Please go ahead, Supervisor Powers.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Early in the meeting, Supervisor Snyder asked us to, maybe come forward and sort of own up to our own past usage. And I will say, I was in high school and college in the 60s, but I never tried it. I still haven't tried it. But that said, it doesn't mean that should I need it at some point for a medical reason, I wouldn't like it to be available. Although I kind of am doubtful that I don't think I would use it recreationally. I'm past that age, I guess, that if it become legal. However, we should allow the citizens of Winnebago County to vote one way or the other on this and not leave it up to us to make the decision for them. The vote would be non-binding, but it would give the legislature a view of how the citizens of Winnebago County felt, and simply going on the record that we were either for or against this issue. Someone talked earlier, one of the community members mentioned the danger to children or some such thing. We legalized alcohol in this state, and we don't any longer serve alcohol to children in Wisconsin. There was a girl who was in my son's high school class in Michigan and is now a young mother in Minnesota. And some years ago, she had a child who needed cannabis for some medical reason. I've lost track of all that reasoning now, but she could not obtain it until very recently when Minnesota did allow medical marijuana. In the 1920s, we were being scared. They were trying to scare white Americans because you know, the Negro man was going to be all hopped up on reefers and going to come after your white daughter and your wives. And a few years later, in 1936, the movie Reefer Madness came out, and that came out with wholesome young teenage high school girls who smoked marijuana and then were seducing their boyfriends into having sex with them. The whole thing was all to make us scared. We've been fighting this war on drugs for almost 100 years, and we're not winning it. We need to concentrate on hard, addictive substances like opioids, and stop filling our jails and prisons and courts with those people who are possessing small amounts of marijuana for their own use. There are hard drugs, and that's where we should be concentrating. Alcohol is more addictive than marijuana is. We certainly in Wisconsin aren't going to give up our alcohol. I would also say that, going along with something that Supervisor Deferding said, I was really shocked when my doorbell rang and I came outside and there's a sheriff's car parked in my driveway, and the deputy gets out with an envelope, and I thought, oh my God, I'm being served. What did I do? And it was kind of embarrassing that everybody in my neighborhood could see a sheriff's car and the sheriff's deputy come out and hand me an envelope. Why in the world are the sheriff's deputies taking taxpayer money to be delivery boys for the county? I didn't understand that at all. I was disappointed in that. Sheriff Motz has said he has no intention of enforcing a mask rule, but he's fine with, maybe he doesn't have time or doesn't think they got the manpower to do that, but they got manpower to have sheriff's deputies drive around to 36 supervisors' homes and hand deliver a mailing for this meeting. That's a very, very poor use of taxpayer money. And I would hope that would not happen again. So I'm voting in favor of this. It's time to let people have a choice. If you vote, if you're not for it yourself personally, and you allow it to go to the voters, you can always talk to your voters about your constituents about how you feel it's not a good thing, and let them make the decision. It's not up to us to make the decision for our citizens on this issue. And I am done. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Supervisor Powers. Next speaker is Supervisor Lenz, followed by Supervisor Brunn.
Thank you, Chairman Ramos.
Thank you.
I just wanted to thank everybody that came out. It was amazing to see the different voices, and it really brought emphasis on how important it is that we have these advisory referendums. We heard from both sides. We heard from, I saw people on the meeting from all three parties, or three of the major parties in the area. I suspect that of all the other people that were there, that there was a significant amount of folks that were nonpartisan. But it clearly painted a picture, and we're doing so right now, on how important it is to get that option out there so people can speak, how they feel and what they believe. So I'm very much in favor of this, and I believe too, if folks feel so strongly that this is not favored by Winnebago County, by putting the referendum out there, the advisory referendum out there, we will hear that and we will be able to put this to bed, and we won't. There'd be no reason to keep asking every 2 years.
Thank you, Supervisor Lenz. Next speaker is Supervisor Brunn, followed by Supervisor Newhoff.
I'd just like to start with my past life. I'm a retired law enforcement officer for over 32 years. And I, quite frankly, find it amazing that people think that having marijuana will make their lives better. I understand the medical part, that I can see. But drug use of any kind and alcohol use of any kind does not usually make people's lives better. It's a kind of a slippery slope. We start doing one type of drug, we do another type of drug. Alcohol is the same way. You just have a little bit. Sometimes people get carried away with it. I also think that normal has something to do with this whole thing. We just got done voting on something, not wanting corporations involved or organizations. Well, I think there was some recruiting for some of the people that commented to come in and speak on this. I guess I wouldn't be embarrassed by having a squad car in my driveway. I feel very offended by that kind of statement that law enforcement is always out to pinch people and get them in a wrong situation. That is not at all what the profession is. I think the media lately has really been painting a bad picture of law enforcement. And I know myself, I've never arrested anyone for a small amount of marijuana and put them in jail. That does not happen. Typically, it's the person that's a dealer trying to make money on it, which I think that is why some of the people want this legalized, because they want to start their own businesses. I also think that there's individuals that are afraid of what could happen if it isn't legalized, because they are using it now. I am strongly opposed to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Brun. Next speaker is Supervisor Newhoff, followed by Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Newhoff.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I am in favor of Resolution 56, but I do have a question regarding the sheriff's personal service fee. I'm not sure if somebody can answer this for me. Who was responsible for paying that personal service fee? As I estimate, according to the Winnebago County Sheriff's website, each person that's delivered is $75. So that's about $2,700. Curious who paid that.
I don't know if I can really answer that, Supervisor Newhoff, for you. I would have to assume it comes out of the sheriff's budget, but I'm afraid I cannot really answer that for you.
Okay, that's all. Just curious who paid that $2,700 of taxpayer money.
Thank you, Supervisor Newhoff. Next speaker is Supervisor Eisen, followed by Supervisor Weiss.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Unlike the resolution 2 years ago, this resolution is concise and worthy of the ballot. I approved this resolution at the Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. However, I mistakenly opposed it at the last legislative committee. I call for the question.
Thank you, Supervisor Eisen. So Supervisor Eisen called for the question, so that does take precedence, and it is actually not debatable. So was there a second, actually?
I'll second it.
Okay. Okay, so there was a motion and a second. So when you call for the previous question, it is not debatable. So we'll go directly to a vote. Now, just to clarify, we're going directly to the vote to end debate. It will require 2/3 vote in order for calling the previous question to be affirmed. If it's affirmed, then we go to a direct vote on the resolution. If it's not affirmed, we continue debating. So what you really are voting on is whether or not to end debate on this further and go to a direct vote on the resolution. Okay? So we are going to do a roll call vote for this so that we have the correct number of votes. Because once again, it does require a 2/3 vote. So please go ahead, Clerk Ertner.
Supervisor Konetsky,
Supervisor Konetsky?
No. No.
no. Okay, no for Supervisor Konetsky. Supervisor Brun,
Yes, for a vote.
yes. Supervisor Borchert,
Yes.
Supervisor Eisen,
Aye.
Supervisor Ramos,
Nay.
Supervisor Defferting,
Yes.
Supervisor Lenz,
Thank you.
Yes.
Supervisor Newhoff,
Aye.
Supervisor Nussbaum,
Yes.
Supervisor Spellman,
Aye.
Supervisor Albrecht. Pardon?
Supervisor Albrecht was an aye.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Gabbard,
Supervisor Gabbard,
can unmute.
Nay.
Nay.
So Josh is eating Jello.
Supervisor Binder,
No.
Supervisor Conrad. No, I'm sorry, excused. Supervisor Shorsey,
No, and point of order, Mr. Chairman. My lovely Winnebago County iPad died in the middle of, right as I was supposed to speak after Supervisor Powers. So I would like, even if we do, the vote is in favor of calling the question, I would like the opportunity to speak because I was not able to control my iPad.
we will give you that opportunity. So if this motion is affirmed, we will have one comment from Supervisor Shorsey, and then we'll go to a direct vote.
Thank you.
Supervisor Belante,
Yes.
Supervisor Gordon, oh, excused. Supervisor Wingren,
Supervisor Wingren?
Mr. Chairman, I strongly object. I've been trying to talk again and not been recognized. I've had a lot of interest in this topic, as you know, and as Mary Ann Miller knows, and as our committee knows, and I resent the fact that I'm not allowed to speak.
Supervisor Wingren, in no way were we trying to stunt your voice. Your hand wasn't up. We will give you an opportunity, just like Vicky Shorsey, but in no way were we intentionally trying to now allow Supervisor.
I'm on the phone, sir. How do I put my hand up using the phone?
That's a very good question. Probably the best thing to do. I think I've seen some people put it up, but I'm not sure.
star 9.
Star 9, Supervisor Wingren. I didn't know that either, though. So apparently
Star 9, okay.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you bring it up.
I've been trying that. Whatever.
We certainly
thank you.
apologize.
I know, it's just.
We're going to give both Supervisor Shorsey and Supervisor Wingren after this. It's unfortunate because of the technology, but we're going to try to.
What was his vote on this?
What was your vote, though,
Thank you,
Supervisor? And I think his vote was a no.
No, all right. Supervisor Lautenschlager,
Yes.
Supervisor Norton,
No.
Supervisor Warnke,
No.
Supervisor Zelmer,
Aye.
Supervisor Skellinger,
No.
Supervisor Buck,
Aye.
Supervisor Powers,
No.
Supervisor Locke,
Supervisor Locke?
Hello?
Yes. And your vote on calling the previous question, Supervisor Locke?
No.
Thank you.
Supervisor Wise,
Aye.
Supervisor Finch,
No.
Supervisor Youngquist,
No.
Supervisor Fari,
Yes.
Supervisor Rasmussen,
No.
Supervisor Keller,
Yes.
Supervisor Egan,
Supervisor Egan?
No.
Supervisor Ellis,
No.
Supervisor Snyder,
Aye.
Supervisor Jones.
Aye.
Now we're going to tally the vote. As a reminder, it requires a 2/3 to pass it affirmatively. If it fails, we continue with the vote. If it would pass, we're going to allow the opportunity for Supervisor Shorsey, followed by Supervisor Wingren to speak. We'll wait until we tally the vote.
Okay, so 18 to 16, so it lost.
So the vote was 18 to 16, so that is not a 2/3 majority. So we will continue with debate. We're going to first allow Supervisor Shorsey to speak, followed by Supervisor Wingren, and then any other supervisor after that. So first, Supervisor Shorsey, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I apologize for that. It was plugged in.
Understandable.
For some of those who don't know me, I have worked as a professional in healthcare for over 40 years, and some of that included work with the county health department and some of the other departments on programs that serve uninsured people and also children who are at risk for child abuse and neglect. I'm a graduate of Madison East High School, so I grew up at Madison East I attended in the late 60s and early 70, 71. So I'm familiar with drugs. My stepfather was an alcoholic, and my brother was deeply into both marijuana and hard drugs. So I do have some understanding of the realities of creating a drug culture in our society. And Brian, I'm saying my comments are based on my professional opinion and not just my personal opinion, but certainly both are reflected in my comments. So I'm urging all of my colleagues, regardless of your age or your political leanings, to vote no on this resolution for the following reasons. The broader issue here is legalization of marijuana at the state and federal level, and it is not the jurisdiction of the county. And I personally believe this is a waste of our time and money. It costs us $20,000 to put a referendum on the ballot. And the legislators have said, if you have something to say about legalization of marijuana, it should be directed to them. So this resolution was already defeated in 2 committees, and so at the proper levels, including legislative and judiciary committees. The referendum is a party-based strategy to influence state representatives, and I personally refuse to be a political puppet. We're seeing a lot of that lately, I believe. And don't be fooled. Medical marijuana research and use are already underway, and the research that is done in a professional setting is safer. And when the product does reach the market, it is FDA approved and properly administered. That is not the case. If you look at a lot of the states who have legalized marijuana, it's a free-for-all in most cases. And the local pot shop is next to the local liquor store. The promise of tax revenue is another issue. I know that some are salivating over this. It'll never be what it is expected, and dramatically reduced by the social cost. Health and healthcare, education, workforce performance, social decay, et cetera, et cetera. There is a great cost to moving forward with this. So what we know from credible research, and Brian has had an opportunity to review that, basically says the NIH may not be a great source, but it was one of my sources, and I think it's pretty darn good. We know that children and young adults lose. Pregnant women who use and their babies lose. Low-income people of color lose. Drivers lose. Law enforcement loses. Long-term habitual users lose. I found a great study on long-term habitual users and their health. And most of the people we've heard from are around this issue are users, lobbyists for the industry, or people who are political party representatives, and all looking for ways to benefit financially or legally from the legalization of marijuana, and therefore asking us to help those entities with marketing, basically doing their marketing for them. The legislature has not asked for our help in surveying our community. The federal government is resisting marijuana legalization for very good reasons. And trust me, if it's a big financial gain, they would be all over it. They're not. And we should be very aware of this and cautious because of it. So in summary, I'd like to share a quote from David Evans, who is an attorney for the Drug-Free Projects Coalition. And he says, not all data is in about the economics of marijuana legalization, but on balance, it would be negative public policy for which our society will pay a great spiritual, medical, public safety, and even economic cost that we can ill afford. And we certainly have enough problems before us, and we don't need more. So please vote no again tonight. We've defeated this before. We've defeated it twice in committee. And this resolution is not progress, nor a good direction for Winnebago County support. So thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Supervisor Shorsey. Next speaker is Supervisor Wingren, followed by Supervisor Eisen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Wingren.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I first of all want to apologize to you. I didn't mean to lose my civility there, but I was frustrated with this darn technology, I guess.
I completely understand from this end too. I appreciate
the question we're going to answer tonight is question we're going to answer tonight, I believe, is a large one, and that is, do we get it? At the April reorganizational meeting, I spoke to the issue of we need to focus. We need to focus on issues during this time of pandemic and chaos all over the world, on issues that we can do things about. Priorities, in other words. Let's make a list of wants versus needs. During the campaign that we all had in April, did anyone when you were out talking to people to the limited amount of time we could do that, say this is the number one issue facing the county, or that it was an issue at all? Not in mine. I haven't gotten one phone call urging me to vote for this, and several a vote against it. The unintended consequences of this are huge. What does it do? I think the sponsor of this resolution will truthfully admit it does nothing. It's advisory only. What does that mean that it does? Again, nothing. We cannot, marijuana is not legal now. If 90% of the people vote for it, it will not be legal then. The only way we can change this law is to change the state legislature. So if you really believe in this cause of legalizing marijuana, you need to concentrate on this fall's election. Find out who the candidates are in your area for state assembly and state senate. Decide what your position is on this issue and try to match them up. If you support marijuana, support candidates that want to legalize it. Having the county board say that what they think is nothing. I get a kick out of somebody says, oh, we need to allow the people to voice their opinion. But yet, I understand there's somebody going to bring in a resolution to lower the size of the county board. Let's see if the same individuals are jumping on that bandwagon. Let's have a referendum on lowering the size of the county board, something we could do about. We could do something about. So it does allow us to go home tonight and feel happy that we did something. That's delusional. We're not doing anything. I want to mention also Brian Defferton by name, and that is, I admire him a great deal. He's a very bright man. He knows how to frame things. He knows how to support things that are important to him. So I salute him. I do not favor the whole notion of when the board has two committees vote something down, now the whole board is going to vote on it too. That doesn't make any sense to me. I think we need to focus again and unite ourselves. This is one of those issues that does nothing but divide us. It tempts us to be uncivil, and I certainly could offer some examples of that, couldn't I? All this does, as I said, is distract and divide, and that's not a good thing. So let's move forward. Let's defeat this. The million people that voted for this in Milwaukee, did that change anything? No, it doesn't. So let's send a message that we get it. Let's focus on the issues of homelessness. People not being able to maintain their homes because they can't pay their mortgage or they can't pay their rent. Let's say to the people, we get it. We know how to prioritize. This is not the issue to focus on now, and I respectfully request that we consider that aspect and vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Wingren. Next speaker, Supervisor Weiss, followed by Supervisor Zelmer. Please go ahead, Supervisor Weiss.
Thank you, Chairman Ramos. Wow, this being my final act, you really threw a hardball, and so I was open for a softball for the last thing I do on that. Well, a year ago, I voiced my objections to this based on the fact that our oath of office said that we will support the U.S. Constitution. I still feel that today. This year, probably, I'm a little more open about the fact that we do have to sometimes let the people make the decision for us. I've had some family issues where some young members of the family got into it very early and got eventually put into prison about it. So I have some very big thoughts about that this is a problem. But I also have thoughts that the population is going to have to make this decision, not us. I mean, this is good that we're doing it. It shows that, yes, we think that it should be on the ballot. Let the population decide what it is. Like I say, you didn't give me a softball on this one, but I think I'm probably going to go ahead and vote for it this time. I really think that the people need to make the decision on that. So thank you, Chairman Ramos.
Thank you, Supervisor Weiss. Next speaker is Supervisor Zelmer, followed by Supervisor Buck. Please go ahead, Supervisor Zelmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got a quick comment on the sheriff's deputy who delivered the packet of information last week. I had no problem with that at all. It's faster than the Pony Express could have got it here. And I talked to the sheriff's deputy for a few minutes, got to know him a little bit. We had a couple of personal interests the same, and I left it at that, so it was a positive in my view. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Zelmer. Next speaker is Supervisor Buck, followed by Supervisor Rasmussen. Please go ahead, Supervisor Buck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of comments. We've talked, at length tonight about civility, and we bring this up often about doing something to make us feel good. I would argue against that. This is something that people are talking about in the community, and this referendum does exactly that, gives them the ability to go to the polls and voice their opinion either way. So people, in the community are doing it as we heard tonight, and I am going to fully support this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Supervisor Buck. Next speaker is Supervisor Rasmussen, followed by Supervisor Shorsey. Please go ahead, Supervisor Rasmussen.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Heard a lot of nice statistics tonight about this. You can believe what you want, like most things in this world today. I have two examples of this in my life. One, as a younger person, back when I was in the Navy, stationed up in the Aleutian Islands. Two acquaintances and I on a Saturday took a walk around the mountain. They warned us up there, and in that kind of weather, be careful, the weather changes quickly. Do not get caught out in it. In the 3 years I was stationed up there, 8 people got caught out in it and died. Anyways, that's part of my story. Walked around the mountain. We were out on the Bering Sea sitting on a rock. The other 2 guys decided to smoke some marijuana. They smoked marijuana. I did not. Storm rolled in. I said, come on, guys, we better get back. There's a storm rolling in. You could see it. They thought it was far out. And I think the word was, well, there's some other words back in those times. I left. I made it back. The other 2 guys had to get a search party for them. The difference, they were high, I was not. more of a previous story. Recently was in a state where marijuana is legal. Noticed that the places where they sold it, there was a lot of tents, people in tents underneath bridges, a lot of garbage, a lot of disarray. Those areas reminded me of a third world country. Is that what we want here? I can't support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Rasmussen. Next speaker, Supervisor Shorsey. We're working to unmute you. There you
There
go.
we go.
Please
There we
go
go.
ahead, Supervisor.
Thank you. No more comments on the resolution, but on the sheriff's delivery, as a member of the Judiciary Committee, I have to tell you that we routinely get some deliveries from the sheriff's office as committee members, and I personally am very happy that he shared this information with you, and I think that was maybe a oversight on our committee's perspective, because he did give us this information and we did not realize that we probably should pass it along. I think we thought that everybody got a copy on email. So don't give the sheriff a hard time for doing this. It's something, it's part of the way they do business with us.
Thank you for the comment, Supervisor Shorsey. Next speaker, Supervisor Binder. Please go ahead, Supervisor.
I can't support this. It's a federal crime, and all the states that basically legalize it, it's still a federal crime. You can't take that money to the bank. If you take over $10,000, they file a suspicious activities report. So there's no way of basically keeping track of the money. So it's like a federal crime. If they want to legalize it, let the federal government legalize it, and the state should follow. So unfortunately, I can't support it.
Thank you, Supervisor Binder. Seeing no other call-ins, we'll go ahead. We'll do a roll call vote on this one again. And we will start with District 1. The Clerk Herbert will call in succession, starting with District 1. As a reminder, it's a majority of those present for passage. Please go ahead.
Supervisor Konecki,
Supervisor Konecki, your vote on Resolution 056?
The whole unit?
was that a yes or a no?
Was that a yes or no on Resolution 056 in regards to the referendum for regarding the legalization and decriminalization of cannabis?
No.
No.
Thank you, Supervisor Konecki.
Supervisor Brunn,
N-O, no.
Supervisor Borchert,
Supervisor Borcher?
Gonna vote yes.
unmute.
Oh, that was
Looks
wise.
like a no. Is that a no, Supervisor Borchert? Okay, no. Supervisor Eisen,
Supervisor Eisen?
Yes.
Supervisor Ramos,
Yes.
Supervisor Defferding,
Supervisor?
Yes.
Supervisor Lenz,
Yes.
Supervisor Newhoff,
Yes.
Supervisor Nussbaum,
Nay.
Supervisor Spellman,
Aye.
Supervisor Albrecht,
No.
Supervisor Gabbard,
Yeah, they're voting over because they
Supervisor Gabbard?
information. We'll see if they'll change their mind.
I'll try to unmute her.
No. No.
No?
Supervisor Binder,
No.
Supervisor Conrad's excused, Supervisor Shorsey,
No.
Supervisor Volante,
Yes.
Supervisor Gordon's excused, Supervisor Wingren. Nay, I believe that was
As
a
a
nay.
no? Supervisor Wingren, was your vote no? Your phone is unmuted, Supervisor Wingren.
Oh, No.
Thank you, Supervisor Wingren.
No.
Okay.
Very good. Thank you, Supervisor Wingren.
Supervisor Lautenschlager,
Yes.
Supervisor Norton,
Yes.
Supervisor Warnke,
No.
Supervisor Zelmer,
Yes.
Supervisor Skellinger,
Yes.
Supervisor Buck.
Aye.
Aye, okay. Supervisor Powers,
Yes.
Supervisor Locke,
No.
Supervisor Wise,
Supervisor Weiss?
Yes.
Supervisor Finch,
No.
Supervisor Youngquist,
No.
Supervisor Fari,
Yes.
Supervisor Rasmussen,
No.
Supervisor Keller,
No.
Supervisor Egan,
No.
Supervisor Ellis,
No.
Supervisor Snyder,
Yes.
Supervisor Jones.
No.
So that motion fails 16 to 18. All right. So that concludes our business on our agenda this evening. So with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn from Supervisor Albrecht.
Move we adjourn until August 18th at 6 o'clock.
Second.
There's a motion and second to adjourn to August 18th. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Motion carried. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.